Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is Ali Simnad. I'm the CPO at DvSum, and here with me, I have Ashik Singhvi, our founder and chief executive officer.
All right, very good, Ali. Thank you for inviting for this webinar. Let's get started. A quick introduction from my side. Ashish Singhvi. I am with DvSum and been in data and AI space for the last 23 years. And originally since 2000, it's how does data drive business innovation is has of course improved, and as digital transformation has become mainstream in the last 10 years, uh, one of the key legs of uh, digital transformation and elevating driving business outcomes with data is driven by bringing a data culture to the organization. And what we're going to talk about is how does uh, the 2023, where generative AI has taken mainstream, how can we leverage in the right responsible fashion to enable that democratization of data? So just quickly about DvSum, we're based in Silicon Valley in California. Really, our mission is how do we enable organizations to elevate their data culture to drive maximum business performance? And we do that through our data insights platform that makes it remarkably easy for organizations to discover, monitor, govern, and what we're going to talk about, which is democratize data. All right, so what we're going to cover today in this next 35 minutes is what's the need uh, for being able to, what are the challenges that we have with democratizing data? What are a better way to get those insights using generative AI and chat with data? The key problems with them, and then we'll talk about how DvSum is addressing the problem with our solution, which is DvSum Caddy, and we'll talk about capabilities of it, and in the end, of course, what is the value of bringing generative AI into the organization for the perspective of data analytics. If we start at the very basic, why are companies, what is digital transformation and what do we do with data? At a very high level, data is getting created either by humans or by machines more and more, and all the data that is being collected, you need to find insights from the data, actionable insights that can then be used to drive business decisions. Now, if you go and ask any organization and the business functions, are you data driven? We have invested in data platforms. We have invested in data analysts and scientists. Uh, are you data driven now? And you would get a 50-50 answer. And the reason is, and I'm sorry, these are surveys that is done by Gartner, for example, where they say 57% of the business users are not still making decisions based on knowledge, experience, rather than looking at what data is giving them. And so we went down and said, okay, why is that happening? So if you ask, so what is the current approach? To answer that question, we need to first understand the behavior. If you ask somebody in sales or marketing or operations or customer service or any other function, and you say, okay, we have data, I'm trying to find some information so that I can drive some action. The first reaction is I must ask my analyst or scientist for the data. Why? Because analyzing data requires two things. One, you need to know the context of the data. You need to know the language of the data. If the data is in a database, for example, it is in a technical form, it is tables and columns. The tables and columns might not represent how business thinks about the data. So you need to know about data, where it exists, what does it look like, what does it represent, so that you can interact with it. And the second thing is you need some technical interfacing with the data, whether it is in the form of SQL query to SQL, for example, the most commonly used tool for analysis, or in the form of a self-service BI tool where you can pull the data, create visualization, create tables. Now, these are skills that business users don't have and they shouldn't have. That's not their job. So when in that scenario, they're always dependent on IT or the analytics team to interact with data. And when you do that, of course, there is an iterative process. The IT team has other priorities, other projects, things that could usually take few minutes can take days and weeks. And in the end, the result is that the number of insights getting generated are take longer to generate and they are fewer in number. Now let's look at what is an alternative. What if that business user is able to, in their own semantic language, in their own words, is able to just interact with the data? What's going to happen? First, it's frictionless. The user doesn't need to understand any new technology, understand the technicalities of the data. They know their business. They can go and get started right away. So you don't need technical skills. The second is we are empowering, you are doing self-service to the users. You are empowering them to find data insights themselves. More scale, more democratization of data, less effort on the IT and analytics side as well. And so the net result of that is more insights get generated and the time to generating insights is faster. Now that is certainly a better solution than what we had before. This is what we are enabling with DvSum Caddy. Now, so clearly the way to do that would be to leverage the power of the large language models like ChatGPT, and in generally we'll call it GPT-4 to interface with your data. So let's do a quick overview of what GPT-4 is. It's everybody has heard about ChatGPT. OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, they expose the large language model behind ChatGPT in the form of an API, which companies like DvSum or anybody could leverage to leverage the power, the natural language power of ChatGPT for any third-party application. So we refer to that as GPT-4. I mean, in terms of technology, there is 3.5 Turbo that some of you may have heard about. There are other models like Google has Bard, Dolly from Databricks, and I'm sure there are other LLMs that are coming out every day. We are calling all of them as GPT-4 for the purpose of this demonstration, this discussion. So what are the challenges in doing it? First is, so far, if you think about ChatGPT, it works on data that is available in the internet as of 2021. If you ask a question about current price of Apple, it will not know the answer. More important than that is the fact that it does not understand your data. Right. So in order for it to work with your data, because your data is in a data warehouse, it's in your data lake. In order for a large language model to work with your data, it needs to understand your data. So the first problem or the challenge is, how do you integrate the LLM model that's running inside Microsoft, that's running somewhere, with the data that is running inside your environment? And to do that, it needs to be in a certain format in order for it to interact with the large language model like GPT-4. The second is accuracy and reliability. Now, ChatGPT has as I'm sure many of you have experienced, or probably all of you, it has a reputation of, it's called generative AI. It does not have an answer. It's looking at your question, understanding the context, and trying to predict an answer. Now, when you're talking about analyzing data, while data prediction is something that is important, but when you're trying to find information from your data, it has to be repeatable, it has to be factual, it cannot be generated on the fly. So accuracy and reliability of ChatGPT to give the right answer every time is not given because of the nature of the fact that this is generative AI. So how do you ensure that is another critical challenge that needs to be addressed. And the third is about privacy and security. Many of you may have heard about the Samsung case where Samsung recognized that some of its employees were asking questions by putting sensitive information into ChatGPT, which is going outside the network. And so they had to really stop ChatGPT from being used inside the company. Now that was clearly everybody's wanting to use ChatGPT, but you cannot do it while violating the core data security and privacy controls and policies in a company. So again, the challenge is how do we ensure that sensitive data continues to be protected as generative AI is used, as we democratize data to more users, and other aspects of it controls. For example, there is financial data that you only allow access to certain people in the company. So if you're enabling chat with your data, how do you ensure that only the certain roles or people in the company are authorized to see the data can see it, which are essential enterprise controls? The point is, any solution that is leveraging GPT-4 has to also ensure that privacy and security is built in, which is not given by default in a new application. So these are the areas or pitfalls that we have addressed with DvSum Caddy. So we can build it out, Ali. So essentially, what is DvSum Caddy? DvSum Caddy essentially gives you at a highest level, it allows you to chat with your data with just a browser. Now, if you think about, okay, yeah, that's what everybody is expecting or wants, but how does it work? What's in the box? There are three elements in the DvSum solution. Starting with the left, the natural language integration, which is it uses the same OpenAI GPT-4 that we talked about. We use the Microsoft version, which has a lot more governance and controls in place. So Microsoft OpenAI version of GPT, which helps in doing the natural language understanding. If you look at the DI part, data intelligence, that is where this is the place where DvSum as an application is able to automatically take the raw information that is in your database and create a semantically more accurate representation of the data. Now, what do I mean by that specifically? You have a database, let's just say Snowflake. It has tables, it has columns, maybe it has relationships, maybe it doesn't. The table names are in a technically format. It's a data warehouse type schema. What DvSum Data Intelligence does is it is able to create a model, a metadata-based model, which not only contains that basic information, but also what's the relationship between tables. What does the data actually represent? You might have a field which is called uh, column 1 to 3, but it actually represents invoice quantity. Or a column that might be called, and the values inside it, you might have a product hierarchy. The hierarchy itself might have certain category values like, business unit 1, business unit 2, business unit 3. Knowing all that information is extremely important because the user is not going to ask questions about, hey, filter my data to BU1. They're going to ask a question like, okay, tell me what was my trend of sales for business unit 1. And GPT should be able to understand that in order to generate the right query to run against the data. So that intelligence is not something that's available in a Power BI, for example. It's not available raw inside Snowflake. And that's what DvSum's layer does. It creates a rich metadata layer on top of your database or your data source. And the third piece, the D in the middle, is once you have those two pieces, then you need the solution, which is the pipeline, in order to, when a user asks a question, to be able to query, to be able to generate that query, run the query against your data source, bring back the results, and then automatically visualize the results. When you combine those three things, you have you have the DvSum interface that allows a non-technical user with just a browser to be able to chat with their data, ask questions, and get insights in real time. Now, that's great. This is the technical part of it, but again, what about all the pitfalls that we talked about before? So if you go to the next uh, slide, all those considerations that we talked about in terms of do-it-yourself challenges. So let's enumerate them. From a data integration features standpoint, DvSum is automatically building the catalog of your metadata and enriching it so that you're able to chat with it. No manual effort in mapping the data, in creating a data model, which is something that has to be done when you're using, for example, a self-service BI tool. Somebody needs to translate the technical part into a business-friendly part. The second is our technology, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Data does not leave your network. When we are talking about ChatGPT, we are not sending your data to ChatGPT. We are only sending the question that the user is asking and some metadata information to ChatGPT to generate a query. Or it could be a SQL query, it could be a DAX expression for Power BI. The second is about accuracy and reliability. Now, if we've talked to customers, and there are two things they talk about in terms of accuracy and reliability. One is, my data is not clean, so I cannot chat. I'm not sure if I chat with the data, is it going to give me a right answer? That is a separate problem to solve, because you could have the same problem in a Power BI. If you're using the same data to generate a Power BI report, it's still going to be inaccurate because the data is not clean. However, it is important that as more people use data, that you have clean data. And so DvSum as a platform has data quality monitoring, observability, and cleansing capabilities that allows organizations to say, okay, I want to use chat, but I also want some systematic process to ensure quality of my data. So DvSum's data quality rules, monitoring, cleansing, and write back allows for improving the quality of the data so that your BI reports or the chat is more accurate. The second is in terms of context. Now, I'll give you a real example. A customer asks a question, what is the average monthly spend of my subprime portfolio of credit cards? It's a capital markets company. And ChatGPT comes up with an answer of average of transaction amount, which means it's taking all the transaction amounts and coming up with an average, which is clearly wrong, because average monthly spend means you aggregate all the transactions for every credit card account and then you do an average over a month. So to expect that any large language model will understand, this is an example which is very common, but what about very unique metric definitions you have? In healthcare insurance, transfer rate means benefit enrollment changes between year to year. A United Healthcare versus a Blue Shield has very different definitions of it. So you need the system to have the ability to understand and learn from your definitions, or self-correct itself after this average transaction amount was pointed out. So DvSum solution has the business glossary capability that allows as people are using it and they are giving it feedback, as well as you being able to feed your own custom metric definitions up front, and the system will understand that and use it when it is doing the computations. So adding context, which allows for increasing the accuracy and repeatability of the answers that are coming out. And the third aspect that we talked about on privacy and security, one, of course, is about data not leaving your network, but DvSum's platform is built with governance capabilities. It's built on a strong foundation of a catalog data governance, which means classification of data, having enterprise controls of policies saying what data should be masked, what data should not be visible, being able to define role-based controls, who has access to what type of data, so that when people are chatting with the data, it is not violating principles. Those are not afterthought. Those are capabilities that are built in to our solution. And so single sign-on, data not leaving your network, role-based access controls, automatic data classifications. Those are some of the capabilities that are out of the box within the DvSum solution. So if to summarize what we have discussed thus far is, on the left in this picture is what is the as-is process. A business user who wants to use data to drive insights has to go through a process of either talking to their analyst, a scientist, or the data engineer or IT to do back and forth, and finding any insight might take days and weeks. Versus the DvSum experience, where that same business user, just with a browser, is able to ask questions and get real data from their data source instantly, and in self-service mode. Now that is true data democratization, or what we call as BI for the masses. Some other very quick capabilities to highlight when we talk about chat. Again, as I said, a clear importance of chatting with your data is for the system, for ChatGPT to understand your um, definition of data, and this is just to highlight the reason why DvSum is able to do it better than anybody else is because of the capabilities of a catalog that exists, which means its ability to connect to many type of data sources, whether it's on-prem data sources or to cloud data sources. The automation, where all that semantic intelligence is being automatically built based on industry databases that DvSum has. The glossary, which allows you to create standardized definition of metrics that is then used in GPT-4 to give the additional context. We already talked about the governance features that help enable or ensure privacy and security of data. And certainly, when we talk about chat with data, it's about I know where the data is, and I know I want to interact with it. But what about scenarios where people don't know where data is? Is it in my data lake? Is it in my data warehouse? Is it in my on-prem database? So all the other capabilities of being able to find the data, being able to know what something means. I just want to know what is the definition of transfer rate. You can chat with it, and it is using search features in DvSum to find your glossary terms. Uh, I want to know what data can I use if I'm trying to build a predictive model in a Jupyter notebook. A data analyst wanting to know some information. They don't want to analyze. They just want to find what data I should use and what does it look like. Again, you can chat with the data and it's able to find that information. And of course, as I mentioned, crowdsourcing of definition, the federated learning part. If I logged in as a user and I give it a definition that, hey, you should consider average monthly spend as X, it continuously learns from that so that the data steward, for example, is able to take that information and then put it back into the enterprise glossary, which then can be used by everybody else in the company. And the second, the part that we talked about is, the catalog is the foundation, but overall, the overall platform of DvSum is built on these capabilities of quality, governance, and of course, the fabric is the overall fabric is the catalog. So what does it give you as a customer? The results are facts from your data and not generative AI responses. This is something, as I mentioned, we are not sending your data to GPT and asking for insights. We are sending the question to generate a SQL statement or a DAX query, and then it gets run against your data source. So results are always facts from your data. Second is the way our solution operates, the data it uses push down processing, which means data doesn't leave your network. And the third is all the enterprise controls that I mentioned before, where only authorized users are able to chat with their specific data. So you can confidently enable and democratize data without worrying that you are going to unnecessarily expose or drive risk with the data security aspect. Continue, please. And the third part of the key features or unique thing about is this is a little bit more technical view of that architecture. DvSum is a software as a service. It's a simple, it gives you all that simplicity of a SaaS solution, just a subscription. You don't need to maintain any infrastructure. But then what about my data? Your data resides on premise in your network, which is the left box. And on the right side, you have data, let's say in Snowflake or a BigQuery or a Redshift or a Synapse or a Databricks, for example. In both those cases, DvSum is able to, we do not capture any data. We only generate and capture metadata, which means that data never, and this is how we are able to enable data not leaving your network. When the results are fetched from your lake, depending on your subscription, you can enable your own caching layer such that even the responses or the query results that are coming in are cached in your version of an S3 bucket or an Azure data lake storage, which means even the results do not come into the DvSum platform. This is a architecture that we have that's unique. and we have a patent issued for it. And really, the goal is simplicity of SaaS while ensuring security and privacy of your data. Both things that IT would love. And number four, in terms of key features, is okay, great. So how do you get started? That itself as well is an easy process. There are three steps to it. You connect DvSum to your data source. It's going to run a scan and it's going to build that metadata layer. Step two is you review. Somebody from analytics team or IT or data stewardship team or data management team can review the information that's in DvSum. They can define the bots. We call them chat topics. Essentially, this is like a bot. You can define a bot, give it a scope. I want you to chat with the entire database, or I want you to chat only with my sales, invoices, products, and customer data. And I want to enable this for sales team. I want to create another bot and enable it for my logistics team. So again, you have those controls in order to control security. So you define those bots, and you optionally you can feed those metrics you might have. That we have a very well-defined way of how transfer rate is calculated. You can feed those as glossary, and that's really it. From that point onwards, um, where the customer you can enable your users, and they can start chatting with data. The whole process could be as little as a few days to up to a week for you to get started. Now, the one question that we as we have talked to a lot of customers is asked like, okay, I am one of the things as part of modernization of data is customers enabling self-service BI tools like Tableau or Power BI or Click, and we could even use ThoughtSpot in the equation. So what's the difference, right? I mean, clearly Power BI is enabling Copilot. I'm Tableau always had Lens. Clearly not a true natural language processing, but doing a little bit of natural language, and I'm sure all these tools are going to enable uh, GPT-based natural language querying. Still, so in that case, what's the difference between DvSum and these tools? So first, to enable Q&A, what do you need for a BI tool to do? Some technical user or an analyst has to take the data from your data source, create the semantic layer or a data model, relationships, create a visualization or a data set in Power BI, and then the users are able to use the data. So the speed to enable, so you really have not solved the problem of doing true self-service to the business users, right? So it's a slow process to enable Q&A, whereas in DvSum, as I had demonstrated, you don't need that. You connect to your Snowflake and it's automatically able to build the model and you can start chatting with it. Which takes us to our second point, that dependency, that offloading of the self-service BI part, you still need a high level of effort from IT and analytics teams for the self-service tools, where it's a minimal effort, that second box that we showed. The natural language understanding. At the moment, DvSum is already using the OpenAI models, which means its sophistication of understanding those natural language queries is significantly higher than what the other platforms provide. Now, this is a limited time. I'm sure over 6 months or a year and a half, the other tools will catch up. But the point is, at this point in time, those tools don't have those capabilities that directly OpenAI provides. And the final thing about IT infrastructure is, again, as a SaaS platform, yes, Tableau, Power BI, Click provide a SaaS platform, but when you have to connect to your on-premise data sources, there are two options. You have to send your data to powerbi.com, to the Power BI service, or to the Tableau service. It's not helping with data security, which means companies large organizations implement on-premise or dedicated report servers and Tableau servers. And so again, the IT infrastructure security is more complex in those tools versus in DvSum. With our patented capability, we are able to keep your data in your environment, at the same time provide a true software as a service experience. So to summarize, okay, great. What is the value of chat with your data that you can offer to your stakeholders, right? Or in DvSum's case, what is the value of carry to our customers? So starting with the user, that business user, we are empowering that user so that they can find insight themselves without relying on anybody and without having to learn a language. That's empowering the user. The second is to the organization. Once you are able to, so that's once you democratize data to the user, you are truly you are elevating the data culture in the company. All the data literacy programs, while they are well intended, they are not effective at all because they require that business to learn the technical tools, which is not what the job of business is. In with DvSum, you are taking away the friction, which means more people will use chat to find insights, which means more decisions made with data. That is truly unleashing a data-driven culture. And the third is the speed of insights. Any sort of, even if self-service BI tools have to be made, there is an effort required to make a tool, which means there's more time from an activity or an incident to insights. With DvSum solution, the users are able to find data in real time, which means they're able to make decisions that are more timely and potentially more accurate, which means better business agility and better business performance. So that takes us to the end of my presentation. Hopefully, you found it informative. I've provided my contact information. Please contact me for. I mean, we'd love to. We're working with a lot of customers at the moment, and we do free trials of our product so that customers are able to see hands-on value of it. If you're interested, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to have that conversation. Ali, I'll open it up for question and answers.
Thank you very much, Ashish. That was a great presentation. Good insight. Thank you. I've got a few questions, so let me go over them very quickly. One of them is, said, with the adaptation of ChatGPT, how do you see the role of the data analyst change? What's your thought on that?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think there is a lot of talk and especially reaction that, oh, with the chat GPT now, is the role of data analyst gone? And clearly it is not. And what does that mean? If you consider truly what a data analyst role is, it's not about creating reports. It's not about extracting data. It's actually mining the data, taking the analysis to the next level to find true insights, whether it's diagnostic analysis or going a little bit more into data science with doing predictive and prescriptive. The goal of what chat with your data is going to do is taking away that mundane, small, simplified effort work and offloading it to the business so that the analyst can focus on the high value activity. So I believe the data analyst role will remain. However, with a solution like DvSum, you're able to have your data analyst be more productive and working on a more strategic high value item because you're taking away the mundane task of building reports and doing basic data extracts to the end user.
Absolutely. Thank you. A couple other more questions, if I may. One is that, are there any specific industries or sectors where the utilization of ChatGPT has shown promising results? Or again, this is a new thing. You might not see the result yet, but what's your thought on some specific use cases that you see a lot of promising for this approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think the generative AI clearly has shown that it is a generation level disruptor, which means that it is going to impact. I mean, in some form or fashion, it has applicability in every organization. Having said that, I think I would say three areas have emerged, right? We'll talk about, chat with your enterprise data, which is what DvSum is focused on. But just to quickly cover, I think a lot of unstructured data that reside in companies in the form of PDF documents or additional knowledge that exists in documents, being able to digitize and vectorize the data so you can chat with that information or search that information. So searching your PDF through semantic knowledge is clearly one use case that has applicability everywhere. The second part is, or I should say that is one major. And the second part, which we are talking about, is finding data insights from your data warehouse or from your databases. What we are finding is that, anytime, so healthcare industry, I mean, I think what I would like to say is companies that are modernizing the cloud clearly are ready for this disruption because they already have data in multiple silos. They already are decentralizing their data analytics function. Their business, the company is already on its path to be data driven, which means the business users are expected or they like to find insights from data. There is more data in the company. So clearly companies that are, regardless of industry, that are more forward in their data journey, data modernization journey, are clearly the ones that are looking to leverage this capability. But within, and then just to add another aspect to it, within the industry sectors, I mean, what we are finding is healthcare market, which includes payers and providers, and pharma are clearly one area that are where the use cases are very apparent. But I would not just limit it to that. I mean, in our conversations with about 50, 60 customers, I mean, those are across the entire spectrum of healthcare, financial services, retail, manufacturing, and telecommunications.
Great, thank you. And my last question is kind of an open-ended question: is what do you think is next for ChatGPT in the context of enterprise data analysis? I know it's kind of predicting the future, but what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would, without sharing a lot of things we are working on from our solution perspective, what I would say, I mean, it's just a start. I think to me, there is, so if we focus purely on enterprise data perspective, right? What is the holy grail? The holy grail is of data insights is uh, you are able to bring autonomy in one, knowing what data is getting created, ensuring the data is accurate, finding insights from the data, and then being able to take action with the data. So one of the areas that eventually it might go to, and there are some studies being done, is how to use it in robotic process automation, so that just through conversation, actions can be done. So it is not just about analyzing, but actually taking action. If we focus within the analytics space, again, coming back, I mean, clearly there are 4 levels in analysis. There is the descriptive, backward-looking, diagnostic, root cause, predictive, and prescriptive. So taking there is a concept that came about 5 years ago called citizen AI. And the whole idea is, can every person in a company actually build an AI model? And clearly that was a hype. But we have now a platform with generative AI where perhaps it is a possibility. So that is an area that we are seeing that there is at least demand from the customer side.
Great. Thank you very much, Ashish. Thank you everyone for participating. This is going to be posted so you can see, and also we email it to you. Also stay tuned for more upcoming webinars from DvSum team. Have a great day and talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.